One of the possible outcomes that I see happen is the board is going to have a vote to officially retire the caricature but not the name. And I could see an outcome where we keep the name and not the character. So can you speak on the distinctions that you see between the iconography sometimes associated with these mascots and just the name itself?
To me, it's you can't really separate them that much. I mean, some logos or caricatures are particularly beyond the pale, like Chief Wahoo was, but it's still basically telling the same story. And we've seen with the Cleveland Indians, the team that had Chief Wahoo as their logo. First, they retired Wahoo, and then a few years later, they have now said that this will be their final year being called the Indians, because I think it's almost like a literal, in some people's minds, I think it's almost literally out of sight, out of mind, that if they get rid of the visual aspect of a logo, that solves the problem. But to my mind, it doesn't. If your team is still called the Indians or, the Savages or whatever the case might be, and everybody knows where it came from and what it was originally based on, it's still problematic. And people are still going to come to the event, doing war whoops and the tomahawk chop and wearing headdresses and all the rest. It's like basically if you do a half measure, you're basically still giving license to people to behave a certain way, and sort of with a wink and a nod.
I think that's absolutely right, and I think it's worth noting too is that one, through a lot of our conversation today, we've talked about how this representation can't possibly be done respectfully. There's damage being done regardless of intent, and I think we've talked about that quite a bit. But I think you also have to think about what you don't control the entire universe of something once you open it. I mean, sure, you could have a school, let's say in theory that North Haven goes to just keep the name Indian. Like, okay, we're not going to use any of that imagery. You don't control the entire world of opening that box. I mean, maybe you don't have a painting in your cafeteria. Maybe you don't do have a mascot at your pep rally. But the opposing teams, I mean, you're certainly opening a door for very troubling imagery, and I've seen pictures of it at Connecticut high school games where effigies of chiefs are being dragged by pickup trucks, saying to beat the other team. I mean, you don't control the full universe of something when you keep it open. By creating that opportunity, you're inviting hate speech, you're inviting discrimination. I don't think there's any realistic way to say we can control this. It's not real. Professor Berger?
I think Paul brought up an excellent point that's from a non-native perspective, in some ways that's a terrible solution, that you don't get to do the crazy things with your team mascot that teams like to do in general. But I think that's one of the important aspects of the research, that even if you don't have what everybody can see as a stereotypical negative image, it still has that impact of both saying there's a particular racial cultural group that another group gets to hold up as theirs without any consultation with the group. And I don't know how much you guys are aware, but there is a real concern about sexual violence against Native women. And I think it comes from this idea that Native women's bodies are in part there for other people to use. And I do think that appropriating images of a racial group contributes to that. I used to have an Ojibwe student who said she chose not to go to a school, Central Michigan University, which was offering her a full ride because she didn't want to be at a school where she was the mascot.
So we are Nipmuc and Narragansett descendants. I currently live in North Haven. I chose to send my daughter to a North Haven school system, and after some huge racial issues, we decided to pull her out and move her. And we remain very constant in the battle against human mascots and imagery throughout Connecticut, New England, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island.